Mary had a little lamb.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
You did something that triggered a lot of people yesterday, including myself, by releasing the name of the whistleblower whose complaint has now led to impeachment hearings. The whole point of releasing a name is to intimidate someone, to threaten someone, and to scare other people from coming out. That's something that dictators do. I've lived in China. I've seen that firsthand. That's not what America does. That's not who we do. We stand by our people. Why did you want to release the name?
Listen, Abby, I think... I think the reality of the answer is the whistleblower's name was on a little website called The Drudge Report a couple of days ago. It was in Real Clear Politics. I literally quote tweeted an article that had the guy's name in the title of the article. So that whole thing is nonsense. But I wish the outrage would be equal. I mean, there was no outrage when, my family got an exploding letter of, with white powder substance in it. They're protecting a guy, in the CIA, and there's great outrage. But when your family gets something, it's there. And that's a big part of the book, which is it's not a level playing field in terms of outrage. We do live in an outrage culture.
He asked to be anonymous. Your family did not. There's a difference.
But he literally millions of people, and for days he's been out there in the media.
But does that make it right?
So what's the difference between me tweeting about it?
It's different when the president's son does it, though, isn't it?
Why? I mean, I'm a private citizen putting this out there. If everyone in this room could have read it, I don't see any difference whatsoever.
He doesn't see any difference whatsoever because Donald Trump Jr. is Butthead, is what he is. His brother is Beavis, and he is Butthead. And I challenge you to look up Beavis and Butthead and see if you can, point to the resemblance there. So this is disgusting, okay? This is really vile and gross. Jr. and the Drudge Report and the American Spectator have decided that they know who the whistleblower is. And trust me, the name that they printed is not anybody that you've ever heard of. It's nobody I've ever heard of. And this person, obviously, then, is not a public figure. This person asked for anonymity. Donald Trump Jr. never asks for anonymity in anything that they do. They just want to hide things that need to be made public, like tax returns and business records, and whether or not they're still enriching themselves off of foreign business deals while their father is president of the United States and Ivanka is a senior advisor to the president of the United States. But this is just so sick that is what Donald Trump Jr. is doing, that he is tweeting out the name, a name you've never heard of a CIA intelligence officer who doesn't have Secret Service protection. Donald Trump Jr. and his whole freaking family have Secret Service protection. And he's sitting there going, well, there was no outrage when, we got some package of white powder, which, by the way, I never heard of. Probably because it was intercepted by the post office before it ever made its way anywhere near the president of the United States or his children, because they all have Secret Service protection. That's number one. Number two, Donald Trump Jr. is sitting there trying to sell a book. If his last name wasn't Trump with a junior after it, do you think anybody would be interested in anything he had to say about anything ever? This is really vile. This is really disgusting. And of course, you don't need the whistleblower to testify. The whistleblower had no firsthand knowledge, which they were very big on telling you. The whistleblower said in his complaint that more than half a dozen senior White House officials had come to him to report to him that the entire State Department was being used for political purposes by the President of the United States. And in fact, all those witnesses have come forward now, and they all tell the same damn story. Every single one of them, without having the benefit of seeing anyone else's testimony, are all saying the same thing under oath to the House deposition, takers, who are Republicans and Democrats. They are sitting there. They're being questioned by both Republicans and Democrats. They have to take their depositions because Bill Barr, the Attorney General of the United States, will not allow for a special prosecutor to be appointed to find out whether or not the President of the United States committed bribery, literally extorted a foreign ally of ours who is currently in a shooting war with our biggest adversary, Russia. I mean, this is so sick. So, of course, they had to do their own depositions. Did they keep the Republicans out of the room? Absolutely not. No. And everybody's telling the same damn story. So you don't need the whistleblower because the people that are testifying have the firsthand knowledge. You know, this is like saying that you need the person that phoned 911 to report gunshots. The police show up and they find a dead body and a man holding the gun. What do you need the person that called 911 who said they heard gunshots for? Answer, you don't. You need the guy holding the gun and you need the police and the police report. You need the ballistics report, right? I mean, this is so stupid. And it's like, well, you know, the person that called 911 likes Barack Obama or voted Democrat once. This is very sick and sad. They are flailing. And the reason they are flailing is because everybody is telling the same story. And the story in a nutshell is that Donald Trump committed an act of bribery. And in the Constitution, everybody's focused on high crimes and misdemeanors. But there, in the Constitution, it also says bribery, high crimes and misdemeanors are impeachable. And this is what he did. He wanted to effect a bribe. He was holding $400 million in this hand and saying, you won't get it unless you do this for me. And what the for me is for me personally. It's to enhance and help me in my political aspirations to be reelected president in 2020. I want you to lie to your people. I want you to go to CNN. Oh, and by the way, we now know that Zelensky was just about to, I mean, they said, oh, there was no quid pro quo. You know what? Zelensky was told that he needed to step up to a microphone and he needed to talk to CNN. This is what Donald Trump, I mean, literally, it was so specific. He wanted Zelensky to give an interview to CNN saying that he was doing an investigation into the Bidens for corruption and that he was going to look into Burisma, a gas company we'd never heard of, and that he was going to find out whether or not CrowdStrike, a company based in Irvine, California, gave the server, the DNC server, to Ukraine to cover up the fact that Ukraine hacked the DNC. So Hillary Clinton went to Ukraine. This is their fantasy. Hillary Clinton went to Ukraine, told Ukraine to hack her own DNC, and then to take her own emails and the emails of her campaign and the emails of Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the DNC chairman, which clearly showed that the DNC chairwoman had a preference in the primary for Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders, and that she wanted to get all this in the hands of the Ukrainians, who would then dump it to WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks would release it to help her. To help her. We all saw the emails. We all saw the Podesta emails. We all saw the Debbie Wasserman Schultz emails. We all saw, all those emails that WikiLeaks had that the Russians stole. Did that help Hillary Clinton? No. So what is this crazy idea that they have? How did this in any way Plus, now we all have testimony. We have testimony from Fiona Hill. We have testimony from George Kent. We have testimony from Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. We have testimony from Bill Taylor. We have testimony from just about everybody that worked in the State Department. And they all say that this was a debunked conspiracy theory, that Ukraine had the server or that Ukraine did the hacking, and that the president was literally asking them to lie. So now we know that the interview with Zelensky was set up already. It was set up with Fareed Zakaria on CNN. And Zelensky was going to do it so he could defend his country from Russia. He was going to do it.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
In the memo of the call that was released from the White House between your father and the Ukraine president, your father said, I would like you to do us a favor, though, because our country has been through a lot and Ukraine knows a lot about it. And we have the entire part of the memo here. The other thing, there's a lot of talk about Biden's son, that Biden stopped the prosecution, and a lot of people want to find out about that. So whatever you can do with the Attorney General would be great. This is the basis of the impeachment inquiry. Why is that a sham? Which is what you're calling
First of all, because nothing was withheld. The other guy on the other side actually said, I have no idea what you're talking about. No one knew any aid was even being withheld. The other guy in the Ukraine, in terms of aid being withheld. So no one knew about these things.
But that's not true. That's a lie. Military aid was withheld.
Yeah.
Yes. No one knew about it in the Ukraine, so there was no quid pro quo. You see all the other aspects of this coming out.
It was withheld.
There's been no prima facie case made whatsoever for impeachment. The transcript is there. The witnesses are coming forward. There was no bipartisan support for that hearing
Kimberly,
going
the military aid was withheld.
But not because of that reason.
And again, the other side didn't even know that it was withheld.
The timeline has been clearly demonstrated.
But that's a lie. There have been several ambassadors that have testified. That the military aid was withheld.
Did Gordon Sondland lie then when he changed his testimony yesterday?
Well, I don't know why he changed his testimony. It's sort of interesting. It almost, he says something.
He's afraid of
on the
perjury.
record,
He's afraid of going to jail.
Or he's afraid of being attacked, like so many of us have for so long, by a vicious left that's running a one-sided sham thing. By Adam Schiff, who's doing a one-sided.
All right. So again, part of their ever-evolving excuse that nothing bad happened, nothing wrong happened, nothing untoward happened, there was no quid pro quo, there was no bribery. There was a bribe, obviously. And so it's pointed out yesterday to Donald Trump Jr. when he says, Ukraine didn't know. They didn't know the money was being withheld. And they try to fact check them in real time, okay? And it's difficult. It is difficult to do with 5 people sitting around a table and 2 of them, and they're lying through their their pie holes constantly. Here is the testimony from Vindman, from Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, with regard to whether or not Ukraine knew that the money, the security aid, was being withheld. Here is it says, Colonel Vindman, I believe you testified earlier that around the middle of August, you started to receive inquiries from Ukraine with regard to the assistance. Is that correct? Answer. That is accurate. Yes. So who did you hear from in Ukraine? The inquiry that I've been referring to would be from the Ukrainian Deputy Chief of Mission, the person I speak to most often in Ukraine, on the Ukrainian side. And that was the middle of August? To the best of my recollection, yes, that's correct. The Ukrainian chief of staff was asked, what is going on? And remember, there are text messages between Sondland and George Kent and Yermak, okay, who is like the first assistant to President Zelensky, and they tweet to our side, the Ukrainians do, a Politico article that clearly indicates that security aid to Ukraine is being withheld. And they're like, what about this? What is going on over there? So this is another lie. And Junior is just sitting there lying through his pie hole with his, girlfriend, wife. She calls herself Mamacita, which is very fascinating. And then you have the testimony of Fiona Hill. Fiona Hill said about the Ukrainian CrowdStrike crap. Now, of course, the girlfriend, the Mamacita, says that, that's not the reason why the money was being withheld. That's not the reason why. Well, Mick Mulvaney confessed that was the reason why. But that set aside, here's Fiona Hill's testimony. She said, the questioner said, at my peril, I'm trying to figure out whether this is just complete fiction that was pitched to a reporter and has been completely debunked based on information you have, or whether there's any other explanation for this. And this has to do with the portion of the call which, talks about CrowdStrike, and then there's ellipses, ... some very wealthy Ukrainian has the server, ... right? And she testifies to this. She said, it is a fiction. It is a fiction that the Ukrainian government was launching an effort to upend our election and mess with our democratic systems. Because if you're trying to peddle an alternative variation of whether the Ukrainians subverted our election, I don't want to be a part of that. I will not be a part of that. And whoever this questioner was obviously a Republican, because he was very adverse to her position that the whole CrowdStrike dumped the server, the DNC server in Ukraine is crazy. He says, I'm not trying to peddle anything. I'm trying to ask you about what information you have regarding that. And, you know, frankly, if we don't have such a... And then she says, but you're asking me about an article that was written in Politico in January of 2017. And it's the thrust of the question that you're asking here, which is to basically... You know, what we're dealing with now is a situation where, at the risk of saying that everything that happened in 2016 was a result of Ukraine in some fashion... And he goes, no, I'm not saying that. She said, well, it certainly sounds like it to me. And I'm just trying to basically say here that I have very obviously strong feelings about our national security. And I just want to, if I've done anything to leave a message with you, is that we should all be greatly concerned about what the Russians intend to do in 2020. And any information that they can provide, you know, that basically deflects our attention away from what they did in 2016 and what they're planning to do in 2020 is very useful to them. And the questioner starts asking about H.R. McMaster, who resigned, you know, and Homeland Security Tom Bossert, who resigned, you know. And the question to Fiona Hill is, I would like you to find out what happened with this whole situation with Ukraine. They say CrowdStrike, ... Reading her the transcript or the memo or the transcript, ... I guess you have one of your wealthy people, ... The server, they say Ukraine has it. Do you know what President Trump was referring to when he was asking Zelensky to look into these things? And she says, clearly, this all seems to be an alternative theory for 2016 at the beginning here. The whole situation with Ukraine. You've been asking questions all along that Ukraine might have interfered in the election, particularly with references to CrowdStrike. Tom Bossert has already spoken out publicly against this. And we spent a lot of time with Tom and General McMaster and others trying to refute this in the first year of the administration. Tom Bossert came out publicly and said he really regretted this reference after he read the transcript as well, because it is a debunked conspiracy theory. And they're just going to repeat all this crazy crap to disorient their, Cult 45 members, to give them something to hang their MAGA hats on. There is nothing to hang your MAGA hat on. The president is a corrupt individual who was using the entirety of the United States government as his personal political slush fund, as his personal political headquarters. He was sacrificing the security of the United States for himself.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
But the whistleblower, before they knew I was going to release, he came out with a whistleblower, like he's some wonderful person.
Holy crap.
Take a look at the whistleblower. But the whistleblower came out with this horrible statement about this call. So I really had no choice. I said immediately, talk about transparency. I said, release it immediately. And then the whistleblower saw it, and Shifty Schiff saw it, who's a total crook. Schiff saw it, Pelosi saw it, and they said, we got a problem. We don't want to have anything to do with the whistleblower anymore. And the whistleblower disappeared. You know who else disappeared? The second whistleblower. And you know who else disappeared? The informer to the whistleblower, if there was such a person, which I doubt.
Oh my God, he's totally deranged. Obviously, the informer to the whistleblower is a multiple person. It's not the it's half a dozen. It's more than half a dozen. It's senior White House officials. Okay, they all have been sworn and given their testimony. It's Lieutenant Colonel Vindman. It's George Kent. It's Sondland, who had to amend his testimony. It's Bill Taylor. It's Maria Yovanovitch, who was Rudy Giuliani was smearing her and lying about her and defaming her and ruining her hard-earned 30-year reputation. I mean, there wasn't an informant to the whistleblower. It was multiple people who have all been sworn, have all given their testimony. And next week, on Wednesday, the very first of those deposed people will testify in public for us. Next week, on Wednesday, Ambassador Bill Taylor, who took the place of Marie Yovanovitch after Giuliani was successful in smearing her, spreading lies about her, defaming her, ruining her life's work as a foreign service officer dedicated to this country's national security, dedicated to spreading democracy throughout the entire world, especially with respect to Ukraine. I mean, it's just so unbelievable. And we'll hear from her next Friday. Next Wednesday, George Kent and Bill Taylor will testify. And let me tell you something about this threatening of the whistleblower, who is a person who was approached to write to the Inspector General of the intelligence community a complaint saying that multiple White House officials had come to him with credible and urgent stories that all checked out. The IG checked them out and said, yes, this is credible and urgent. And the White House then began to break the law. At that point, the Inspector General was obligated by law to provide that report to Congress. And Joe Maguire, who had been the DNI for all of 2 weeks, testified that he didn't know what to do. He didn't know. The guy who's in charge of the entire intelligence community didn't know what to do when the Inspector General of the intelligence community produced a report saying there was a credible and urgent concern about the president bribing the Ukrainian president. So he goes to the White House counsel. He goes to the Attorney General. He goes to Bill Barr. He goes to Cipollini. And they say, oh, no. Do not give this to Congress. And they broke the law. Joe Maguire testified that he broke the law, but he didn't know. He didn't know, as if ignorance, as the head of the national security apparatus in this country, ignorance of the law, when the IG comes to you with a credible and urgent complaint about the President of the United States extorting an ally of the United States, he didn't know what to do. Like, that's a real defense. I mean, these people have to go to jail. This is so unfreaking believable. But now the whistleblower, it's all about the whistleblower, and the whistleblower disappeared.
Which I doubt. So
Here it is. He's holding up some piece of paper.
Just came out.
It just came out.
It's a disgrace.
And then he puts it back in his pocket.
It's so bad. These people are bad people. And it's so bad what they do to our country. They rip the guts out of a country.
Oh my God.
And it's a shame. And they shouldn't be allowed to do it. And people should stop. Maybe go to the Supreme Court, maybe, but they got to stop it because we have a country to run. And these people, in order to do things, are willing to do illegal acts. It's an illegal act as far as I'm concerned.
What does this man know about the law except how to break it? I mean, he knows nothing. And you know what's really interesting is Anonymous, the person that wrote the I Am Part of the Resistance Inside the White House op-ed in the New York Times, has now published an entire book about how Donald Trump runs this country or how he doesn't. Because he has no idea what he's doing, because he's cruel, because he's only interested in using the office and all of the apparatus of U.S. government to benefit himself financially, politically, emotionally, how he's a cruel man. Cruel, that's the word that he uses to describe him. Says he's intellectually challenged. He doesn't understand anything. You can't brief him. He won't read the briefing. If you brief him orally, you can't give him the three main substance, the three main bullet points of the purpose of the meeting, you have to dumb it down to just one bullet point. It has to be on a slideshow. The slideshow deck has to be very thin. It has to include clip art. And it can only deal with one thing at a time. And he doesn't understand anything about how government works. He doesn't understand his oath of office. He doesn't understand the professionals around him. He doesn't. Here's a quote from the book, okay? He said, this is how he describes Donald Trump and the senior officials that work around him. Quote, "It's like showing up at a nursing home at daybreak to find your elderly uncle running pantless across the courtyard and cursing loudly about the cafeteria food as worried attendants try to catch him. You're stunned, you're amused, you're embarrassed all at the same time. Only your uncle probably wouldn't do it every single day. His words aren't broadcast to the public, and he doesn't have to lead the U.S. government once he puts his pants on." This is our president? He says he's a racist. He says he's a misogynist. He comments on every female professional that crosses his path. He comments on their makeup. He makes jokes about their weight. He criticizes their clothing. How did Sarah Huckabee Sanders survive this? I almost feel bad for her, except I don't. He questions the toughness of women in and around his orbit. He uses words like sweetie and honey to address accomplished professionals. He acts the way a boss definitely should not act in any work environment. He uses funny accents, like to mock Hispanics. He said, we get these women coming in with like 7 children and they're saying, "Oh, please help, my husband left me." These women are useless. They don't do anything for our country. At least if they came in with a husband, we could put them in the fields to pick corn or something. He's got a country to run. This is frightening and chilling and disgusting.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Always trying to make the conduct of other people the issue instead of the conduct of himself. It's the press. It's Hillary. Mm-hmm. Now it's the whistleblower. The whistleblower has performed a great service because what we have seen is his information confirmed that indeed the President of the United States has engaged in all likelihood in bribery. The Constitution only mentions 2 specific high crimes, bribery and treason. This is a case of bribery. The whistleblower called the nation's attention to the president's extortionate demands and bribery. And there is a real chance that the evidence has the president boxed in. That's why he's flailing once again, contemptuous of everything and everybody around him, except he's unwilling to look at his own conduct.
That's absolutely true. Bribery is the crime. There are other ancillary crimes like obstruction of justice, 10 counts that Mueller found. The extortion of, Ukraine without notifying Congress. Now, if Congress appropriates money, I told you there's a law. It's called the Congressional Impoundment Act. And if Congress appropriates money, the president cannot hold up that money from being distributed unless and until he goes to Congress and gives them a reason why, which he never did do. He never did because his intentions were corrupt. His intentions were to corrupt Ukraine. When he says he was interested in corruption, that's partially true. He was interested in corrupting Ukraine. They were interested in corrupting a gas company called Naftogaz that Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch testified was one of the great bright spots in Ukrainian de-corruption efforts. That the man that was in charge of that company was transparent and that he actually invited people to join an international board for best business practices, and that what they told Naftogaz to do, stop buying natural gas from Russia. Russia is corrupt. All the transactions with Russia are corrupting everything to do with Ukraine's natural gas business. So stop doing it. And he did. And this is why Putin was livid, because Ukraine stopped buying natural gas. Rudy saw a chance to make money, and you know the rest of the story. And you're going to hear it all on Wednesday. You'll hear from George Kent. We're going to hear from Marie. We're going to hear from, who's the other one? Bill Taylor. These are professionals, okay? These are people that do not ask for the limelight. These are people that don't lobby. These are people that serve the government, that, have been, foreign service officers, ambassadors for almost 40 years. So we'll see that. What's really disturbing and what's really corrupt and what's really ugly is that after Donald Trump has given numerous speeches about how this whistleblower is a spy, and you know what we used to do to spies, we used to handle them differently back in the good old days, right? Saying that somebody ought to execute this person as if this is seriously demented, but as if that would make his problem go away. I mean, it's so bizarre that the lawyer for the whistleblower last night, you want to know how off the hook this presidency is? The lawyer for the whistleblower had to write a letter to the White House counsel, Pat Cipollini, a cease and desist letter on behalf of his client. I won't read you the whole thing, but I'll just read you a little part of it. Think about this. A cease and desist letter. I've gotten cease and desist letters, okay? When you work for corporate media and some competing interests, or some somebody that you're trying to blow the whistle on realizes you work for a corporate, they write to your boss and they'll tell your boss, we're going to sue your company unless you tell Randi to cease and desist from criticizing us. 99.9% of the time that company is going to tell you, just don't talk about it anymore. Just don't talk about it anymore. Except for me, I violate and then I end up getting sued and then I win. But this is amazing. This is what the lawyer for the whistleblower wrote to the White House counsel. I'm writing out of deep concern that your client, the President of the United States, is engaging in rhetoric and activity that places my client, the intelligence community whistleblower, and their family in physical danger. I'm writing to respectfully request that you counsel your client on the legal and ethical peril in which he is placing himself should anyone be physically harmed as a result of his or his surrogate's behavior. Now, this goes for Rudy Giuliani, this goes for Mick Mulvaney, this goes for Junior, this goes for everybody that sits on the TV that says, oh, President Trump is the real whistleblower, and the whistleblower's name needs to be Rand Paul, all these people that are threatening this guy who is obviously not a public figure. He's an intelligence community member and a whistleblower who simply gave the information that these professionals gave to him to the Inspector General of the intelligence community, which is what you do in the chain of command. He said, respectfully, your client's rhetoric and behavior fall well beneath the dignity of the office. In fact, contrary to President Lincoln's words about governing, existing of the people, by the people, for the people, your client instead appears intent on consistently attacking private citizens, the people. As of late, his fixation has been on my client for reasons that I submit are self-evident. While engaging in foreign affairs of the United States mission to the United Nations in New York on September 26, 19, the president equated whistleblowers and my client, as well as other whistleblowers, with spies, stating, quote, you know what we used to do in the old days when we were smart with spies and treason, right? We used to handle it a little bit differently than we do now. The lawyers, in the old days, spies were summarily executed. And recently, while speaking with members of the press, the president specifically discussed my client and encouraged journalists to report who they suspect the whistleblower is. Quote, the press knows who it is. You know who it is. You just don't want to report it, you know? You'd be doing a public service if you did. And finally, the president quoted Pastor Robert Jeffress by writing the following on social media. If the Democrats are successful in removing the president from office, which they will never be, it will cause a civil war in this nation from which our country will never heal. These are not the words of an individual with a firm grasp on the significance of the office which he occupies, nor a fundamental understanding of the significance of each word he articulates by virtue of occupying that office. The three examples I provide above, which constitute a very small fraction of this rhetoric against my client, equate lawful whistleblowing to something that may permanently fracture a nation, such as civil war. His calls to the public to identify my client by name and his suggestion that he would support acts of violence against my client are candidly some of the most dangerous and reckless things a president of the United States can say. He seeks to intimidate my client, blah, 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 on, and just says, you know, look, if the final paragraph of this letter is really chilling. He said, I submit that it's in your client's best interest to cease and desist in calling for the public disclosure of my client's identity and to cease in rhetoric that may endanger their life and the lives of their family. Should anybody be physically harmed, my co-counsel Mark Zaid and I will not hesitate to take any and all appropriate action against your client. Those who are complicit in this vindictive campaign against my client, whether through action or inaction, shall also be responsible, be that legally or morally. Can you imagine that a president of the United States is getting cease and desist letters, which are usually sent to talk show hosts? Can you imagine? See, this is what you get. This is what you get when guys like Steve Bannon, guys like Roger Stone, guys like Reince Priebus, guys like Jeff Sessions, guys like Barrack and all know that a president is unhinged and he is a cruel man, an indecent man, an abuser of women, a sexual predator, and a reality TV show star and nothing more. As a joke or as some self-satisfying effort, they decide that they can get anybody elected to the presidency of the United States. They can do it by cheating and doing, all kinds of lying and campaign rallies that represent Nuremberg rallies, deploying racist memes, and taking hacked material from a foreign adversary and coordinating its release with a guy who's under house arrest at an Ecuadorian embassy in London. I don't know if they did it for fun. I don't know if they did it for a joke. I don't know if they did it to make themselves feel strong and big that they could get any lunatic elected president. But it's like we're living in a really bad movie. It's like one of those crazy, dumb-ass movies that we've seen. And they have no regret. They have no remorse. And they'll do it again. And we deserve better.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
This country is in real trouble. We need somebody to pull people together.
Just last week, former Mayor Michael Bloomberg said he had doubts about the current Democratic presidential contenders.
I have my reservations about the people running and the way they're campaigning and the promises they're making that they can't fulfill.
Now, after spending millions to help Democrats win elections across the country, he's seriously considering a bid of his own. In a statement, a spokesman says, "We now need to finish the job and ensure that Trump is defeated." But Mike is increasingly concerned that the current field of candidates is not well positioned to do that.
Under Mike Bloomberg's tenure.
In September, he told CBS This Morning he was staying out of the 2020 race, partly because former Vice President Joe Biden was leading a crowded field.
Are you sitting here going, I wish I had done it?
No, I never think back. There was not a road for me when Joe was in the race to get through because we would have split the votes.
But recent polling shows Biden is slipping behind liberals Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and moderate Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg. Bloomberg is a former registered Republican and independent who rejoined the Democratic Party just last year.
How about a possible presidential run?
He's been mentioned as a possible presidential candidate since 2008. In 2016, he backed Hillary Clinton and attacked then-candidate Donald Trump.
I'm a New Yorker, and I know a con when I see one.
All right, let's talk details. If Bloomberg does decide to run, what challenges does he face entering this late in the campaign? And where does he fit among the other Democrats in the field?
Well, sure. He'd have a lot of catching up to do to the other candidates who've been campaigning for months. But the one thing, of course, he has is money, and he's expected to spend his own fortune on building a team, getting on the ballot, and advertising. But a recent poll also shows that if Bloomberg were to enter the race, only 6% of Democratic primary voters say they definitely vote for him. He'll also have to answer for his record as New York mayor, including implementing the controversial policing tactic known as stop and frisk that disproportionately targeted minorities. It's already been the subject of conversation on the campaign trail.
So here we go, everybody. And I guess the sunny news in Michael Bloomberg filing in Alabama to be in the primary on the ballot is that, yeah, I can't think of anything. There's no sunny news about this at all. So I guess the best thing I could say is he's not going to do it as an independent, right? That he's going to do it as a Democrat, and so the Democratic primary voters will get to send a message to him and other billionaires or whatever. I don't know. I mean, people might like Mike. I mean, he's going to spend whatever it takes. The guy is worth. You know what he's worth? This is crazy. This is just a ridiculous number. He's worth $52 billion. $52 billion. I mean, if Elizabeth Warren got her way, you realize that every dollar he makes over $1 billion, so $51 billion would be taxed 6 cents on the dollar. The guy is, look, I don't know what to say about him except that he's never going to make it through the stop and frisk portion of any debate. Okay, he's just not. That was a failed policy that targeted black and brown people disproportionately. He's not going to make it through the Wall Street portion, especially if you have Bernie and Elizabeth Warren on the same stage with him, talking about paying for everybody to have health care by not raising taxes on the middle class, oh no, oh hell no, but raising a 1/10 of a penny transaction tax on large Wall Street trades, right? And a 6% tax on every dollar over $1 billion to pay for health insurance or health care for Americans. I mean, I don't see how he makes it through that. But he really doesn't like the idea of Medicare for all. He thinks it's too extreme. His issues somewhat mesh with mine. I'll just say mine. I won't say yours because it's hard to know who's listening. But his issues on, his position on climate change meshes with mine. He thinks it's an existential threat and that we need to address it post-haste, if not, retroactively. He also is the founder of a really good organization on gun violence and on background checks called Everytown USA. I find that organization to be extremely impactful and informative, and their stats and their information and their websites are all good. They're all great. I just don't think that he's going to be for any new taxes on Wall Street, okay, in order to pay for health care. I just don't, and I know that health care for me is like one of the biggest issues. The other one is, stopping Trump, obviously. But healthcare, if we don't address healthcare in this country, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to keep myself insured, right? And a lot of people are facing this, and we are insured people, but the insurance doesn't kick in until you pay $24,000 in premiums, $6,000 in deductibles, and copays on everything having to do with your health care. I mean, it's unbelievable. But here's what I think Bloomberg thinks that Biden is a loser, okay? He didn't get into the race because, as he said in that little piece there from CBS News, he didn't get in because he didn't want to peel votes off of Joe Biden. he thought Joe Biden was the protector of corporate America, okay? That Joe Biden is a Wall Street dude. Remember, Joe Biden was the senator from, hey, incorporate in Delaware. We're a corporate dream factory, right? Incorporate in Delaware. So that's Joe Biden facing up against Elizabeth Warren, who Wall Street will do just about anything to defeat because she gets that the wealthiest, best situated Americans need to pay a little more. They just do. And she doesn't even start taxing people until the 50 millionth and $1, and that's a 2-cent tax. And then the 6-cent tax doesn't kick in until the 1 billionth and first dollar. Somehow, I just don't think they'll feel it. I just don't think that, that's going to be a big crimp in their lifestyle. I just don't think so. But he's going to peel votes off from Buttigieg. So if you're somebody out there that really likes Pete Buttigieg, I want you to understand Pete Buttigieg is the moderate. Pete Buttigieg is the person that Bloomberg would be taking votes from. Yes, he'd be taking votes from Joe Biden, but he'd also be taking votes from Pete Buttigieg, who is the alternative to Biden in a lot of people's minds, a young alternative to Biden, a Midwestern alternative to Biden. And, they're equally mayors. Bloomberg is a mayor, Buttigieg is a mayor. And the two of them work the mayoral system, meaning they are friends with all of the mayors from all the cities in America because they have their associations, their organizations, their, conferences and things like that. So they're going to be competing against each other. If you're a Buttigieg person, you shouldn't be delighted with the entree of Mayor Bloomberg into the primary. If you're a Warren person or if you're a Bernie person, I don't see any reason to even think about Bloomberg as an issue. He does have a lot of ground to catch up to, but we are 3 months away from the first caucus in Iowa. Now he is trying to get on the first primary ballot in Alabama. That's what he's doing. The thing that's a little bit scary about him is here is another businessman with billions. I mean, multiple, like more money than any person could possibly spend in a lifetime, right? And so that means that most of it is disposable income for him, disposable money. And he's going to spend it. And the other very nerve-wracking portion of his candidacy for me, he owns a media empire. An empire. He owns radio stations. He owns Bloomberg News. He owns websites. He owns television. The people that work for him, I think a chill went up their spine because he's going to have to get rid of all political coverage if he's going to run.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
What Michael Bloomberg is, he's smarter than Trump. He's 25 times wealthier than Trump. He's more respected than Trump. And he is, I always keep saying we're looking for the anti-Trump. And other than Trump being taller than him, Michael Bloomberg is bigger, stronger, richer, smarter than Donald Trump. And he is going to be able to throw Molotov cocktails at Trump like no other. By the way, if Donald Trump is watching this right now, he's just picked up the phone and started screaming at people. You know him. I know him. This is his Achilles heel.
So the reason we're being given that we should, that primary voters in the Democratic primary are pining for a Michael Bloomberg is because Michael Bloomberg is richer than Donald Trump. Do you think primary voters are pining for another billionaire pro-Wall Street dude? I don't know. We'll see, when we start voting, right? But he's going to spend whatever he needs to spend. And when you have $52 billion, I would say, $45 billion of it is disposable income. $45 billion. I mean, how do we get the money out of politics if all we're going to ever get now is people who claim to, be able to self-fund their billionaires' campaigns while, not threatening, any new taxes on the uber wealthy or any, transaction tax on these trades that go on Wall Street. It's not what I'm looking for. It might be what you're looking for, but I would say he's going to pull Biden down below sea level, and Buttigieg, who is seen as the younger Biden, right, the more moderate Biden, is going to be hurt by Bloomberg. Now, Bernie's already said, yeah, that's what we need is another billionaire. And Elizabeth Warren is like, welcome to the race. You know, they're fine. They're fine. But we'll see. Teresa in San Francisco.
Randy.
Yeah.
If Bloomberg is a big supporter of climate change, trying to reverse climate change, how can he not support health care for all? We have coming pandemic due to climate change. How's he going to keep us safe from the coming pandemic?
And what disease will we have?
Oh, well, 25% of the world's population seems to be ill with tuberculosis.
Ooh, TB.
What about SARS?
TB's big fun.
Pardon me?
TB was big
I know,
fun.
but
yeah.
No, it still is very big. And how is he going to save us from these mosquitoes that are bringing us all these wonderful fevers? How is he going to protect us if the government's not looking to see who has contagious diseases?
Well, his concern is that we drink too much sugary stuff. You know, that's how he attacks healthcare, is that you, the imbiber of the giant soda slushies, need to stop doing that. That's how he deals with healthcare. That's how he dealt with it in New York. Trans fats need to be removed from all menus. You know, it's all, the onus is always on you when you ask a billionaire, how do I pay for healthcare? Well, you don't really need to. Just stop drinking sugary slushies and stop, going to Miami where, mosquitoes carry dengue fever. It's all about you.
Yeah.
It's all
magical thinking.
Self-reliance.
It's magical.
Yes, yes.
No, it's magical thinking is all it is.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. For people like us, primary voters, who are, on the more progressive side, which is about a quarter of primary voters, right? This is a non-starter for us, but there are people out there that like Joe Biden very much, but they think that Joe Biden has either been dirtied up by this crazy Ukraine thing, or they think that Joe Biden is a gaffe machine, or they think that Joe Biden is, too old. I don't get it because Bloomberg is 77 years old. And some of them are going for Buttigieg. And Bloomberg is going to peel votes from those two, not from ours. Right. I don't know who this is. Richard in Florida.
Crazy Ukraine thing.
Hello, Randy.
Yes. We're on a delay, so turn that down, please. Thank you.
I'm turning it down right now. Yeah. You were talking earlier about cease and desist orders. Now I understand why you wouldn't sign with MSNBC. Also, what happened to Ed Schultz?
What happened to Ed Schultz?
Yeah, he got fired because it was covering Bernie Sanders too much.
He did not. He was there for 6 years. That's crazy.
Yeah.
He didn't get fired because he covered Bernie Sanders too much. That's just ridiculous. That did not happen. James in California.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry. I had you on. Apologize. Let's stupid.
Oh. Brother David.
Sister.
Hi.
Well, I got a promotion at work, so I have Fridays again. So that's
yay.
one golden thing. I had not heard about Bloomberg and tossing his hat in.
Mm-hmm.
I would say no comment. You've nailed it. We don't need another billionaire. At this point, I had to turn off the last debate 2/3 of the way through because it was like a game show. We need to peel off the people that are under 2% in the polls. They need to follow Beto and get Gillibrand's lead, and get it down to actual debating. That's just how I feel about it.
I think the next one is the 20th of November, and it's going to have now, I'm guessing, 11 people in it.
We entered the Orwellian age with Reagan. Then we entered the Vonnegutian age with Schwab. We have skipped over the Bradburian age, and we are in the Rod Serling age. We just are. I am living for Wednesday.
Yeah.
I just am, because you're dead on, sister.
But Wednesday is the day I get my blowout, and I will not be able to go to Angie. I'm going to have filthy, dirty hair on Friday because of the President of the United States.
And, well, let's put that on the articles as well.
Please.
Randy Rhodes was given dirty, filthy hair by you.
Could we all please write to Adam Schiff on Twitter or whatever?
Thank you. Exactly.
And tell him that another article of impeachment, which must be included by the Judiciary Committee, is the fact that Randi Rhodes has dirty hair every Friday because of this crazy, crazy president.
And here's the thing. I've always called it the scary paresis-ridden clown in the White House because my late mother, the Olive, was a nurse, and I saw her deal with not one but 3 people with tertiary syphilitic syndrome. And other than the drooling, he has exhibited every sign. But I've stopped saying that simply because that is somehow giving him a pass, and there are no passes to be given.
No.
I am very heartened by what happened in Kentucky.
I will say, not guilty by reason of syphilitic advanced syndrome is not anything the law recognizes.
That's right.
Yeah. So syphilis is no excuse.
No excuse.
Right.
Any more than ignorance of the law is.
Listen, he's a fraud, is what it is, and
totally.
But people think he's strong. He's a coward, and he's very weak, and this is why he blames everybody that tries to help him in the end. But they'd rather see strong and wrong.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Jeff Sessions here. I approved this ad when I left President Trump's cabinet. Did I write a tell-all book? No. Did I go on CNN and attack the president? Nope. Have I said a cross word about our president? Not one time. And I'll tell you why. First, that would be dishonorable. I was there to serve his agenda, not mine. Second, the president's doing a great job for America and Alabama. And he has my strong support.
Holy crap. Everything's coming out of Alabama. It's like a horror movie. It came from Alabama. Bloomberg is registering to be on the ballot for the primary, the Democratic primary in Alabama. And Jeff Sessions is going to try and get his old job back in Alabama by making hostage videos. Doesn't he look like he's being held hostage by the Trump cult? He's got to, Trump trashed him so hard. Trump talked about Jeff Sessions. He mimicked him. He mocked him. He said he was a bad attorney general. He shouldn't have recused himself. If I would have known he was going to recuse himself, I never would have picked him. He's a bad guy. He's a bad attorney general. He's this, he's that. I just don't.
The attorney general says, I'm going to recuse myself.
I love that man. You know what it's like? It's like a bad episode of Cops. You ever see the episode of Cops where, like, the crazy drunk woman starts beating her husband with a box of Tide because he was cheating on her, and she goes all, violent, and then the cops come, and they, would you love to, what happened? Well, he hit me, and he told me he was cheating on me, and that if I defended myself, he was going to kill me, so I beat him with this box of Tide. All right, ma'am, would you like to press charges? No, I love that man. That is what this is. This is crazy, and it's all coming out of the South. It's all coming out of Alabama. I don't get it. I don't understand this. What is Jeff Sessions trying to prove? That he cannot live without a government job? I don't get what he's trying to do here. I don't see how Alabama, I don't know. I guess he's running against Doug Jones and, Roy Moore. What a crop you get from the Republican Party. This is such a degenerate crew. It's unbelievable. Oh, and Jim Jordan. Oh, Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan is in big trouble, too. And here's a little tidbit for you. This is really sick. So I don't know if you realize this or not, but Jim Jordan is not on the Intelligence Committee. Jim Jordan is not on it. And Jim Jordan is asking to be put on it so that he can abuse all the witnesses who are going to testify against Donald Trump in the impeachment inquiry. Jim Jordan wants to be a member of the Intel Committee. Okay, I don't think he'll pass the background check. How about a little, I don't know, what do we call it? A little trip down memory lane, flashback. This is Jim Jordan. When Jim Jordan was asked about the Ohio State wrestling team doctor who apparently drugged and raped, 14 and 15-year-old boys. And when the doctor wasn't drugging and raping, he was taking the boys into the shower, exposing himself, okay, and touching himself and relieving himself. I don't know how else to say it. And that it was common knowledge what Dr. Strauss was doing, and that 177 boys had complained to Jim Jordan about this, and Jim Jordan shrugged and said, yeah, we know.
I did know Dr. Strauss. He was, he was there when we got to Ohio State, and was continuing to work at Ohio State once I left. Knew the doctor. But there is no truth to the fact that I knew of any abuse, or I've talked to other coaches. They didn't know of any abuse. That's just not accurate to say those things, that we knew of it and didn't report it. It's just not true.
Is that uncharacteristic for Dr. Strauss? I mean, how do you characterize the accusations against Strauss, against him?
All I know is I never knew of any abuse from Dr. Strauss. Plain and simple. Was the conditions as you described? Yeah, we had a separate locker room, but the shower facility was in the sort of the general area. Yes, he would do that, but they've been our faculty, staff, other students. That's just the nature of how the arrangement was.
It's just the nature of how the arrangement. Jim Jordan folds onto questioning. He likes to question, but he doesn't like to answer questions. So I have to tell you that there are plenty of people that are part of this lawsuit. There are 43 survivors of Dr. Strauss who died. He died in 2005. The lawsuit against Jim Jordan and Ohio State was filed by 43 survivors, and it claims that the quote, the university's ingrained culture of institutional indifference enabled Dr. Strauss to sexually abuse former students and athletes from a half a dozen other sports. Instances cited in this lawsuit say that Dr. Strauss drugged and raped athletes, and that he preyed on underage boys who participated in athletic events on campus. Some of these people are trying to remain anonymous, and they're filing their claims as John Does. So you have a John Doe who said in court papers that he was 14 to 15 years old. He was participating in OSU wrestling camp led by Mr. Hellickson when he went to see Dr. Strauss for an ingrown toenail. Dr. Strauss had him drop his pants, threatened him with a scalpel, and was sexually abused. And during this abuse, he fainted in fear. Mr. Hellickson said that he would take care of it. He hasn't returned a phone call. But as far as whether or not Jim Jordan knew, quote, it was common knowledge what Strauss was doing, and the attitude is what it is. I wish Jim Jordan and Russ Hellickson, too, would stand up and do the right thing and admit that they knew what Dr. Strauss was doing, because everybody knew what he was doing to the wrestlers. And what was a shock to me is that Strauss tried to do that to me. He was breaking new ground by going after a ref. Okay, so this is a new addition to the lawsuit. A referee says that he told Jim Jordan personally that the Ohio State doctor performed sex acts on him in the shower. And that he would regularly go in the shower and drop his drop trowel and, touch himself and all that in the shower after a wrestling match, and that he reported this directly to Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan was the assistant coach at this time. And he said that the reaction that he got from Jim Jordan at the time was a shrug. And that this was just part of the culture. And you basically had to man up and take it. And Jim Jordan now wants to be on the Intel Committee so he can question diplomats and ambassadors who have served this country quietly for 37 years.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, the last major thing that happened today, I mean, so many things happened today, it's just unbelievable, but the last major thing is in the Roger Stone trial. The Roger Stone trial is going on in New York City. Why we don't have cameras in the courtroom for this one is beyond me. I am dying to see this for myself. Yesterday, Randy Credico testified, and he testified that Roger Stone committed witness intimidation and threatened his life. And testified that Roger Stone is the reason why he took the Fifth Amendment, because Roger Stone said he would kill him, produced the text messages that said that he was a dead man walking, etc., and that Roger Stone would kill his dog, etc. And then today, Steve Bannon took the stand. Wouldn't you love to have seen that? My God, man, this is crazy that we can't see that. So Steve Bannon testified against Roger Stone and admitted that Roger Stone was the access point for the Trump campaign to WikiLeaks. Roger Stone's going to jail. That's just a fact. How long? I have no idea. Because it's, his first offense, everybody. It's his first offense. And he is, after all, 67 years old. But he needs to be locked up with Paul Manafort in the cell next door, and Donald Trump needs to be in the block with them. And then, when Paul Manafort leaves after, he's got like 6.5 more years to serve in the federal pen, let Roger Stone have like a 9-year sentence, so he's got at least 2 more years to go when he watches Manafort walk out the door. And Donald Trump ought to die in jail. That's my opinion. That's how, if I were Amy Berman Jackson, the judge in charge, that's what I would do. I would make sure they all were in the same cell block. But if Stone, here's the answer. The reporters, there are reporters in the room. And so I've been watching their Twitter feeds, and they've been, typing as Bannon is testifying, and asked if Stone ever told him he could get access to WikiLeaks and Assange. Bannon replied, never directly, but he implied he had a relationship with Julian Assange. Asked if Stone ever bragged about his relationship with Assange, Bannon replied, I wouldn't call it bragging. I would call it boasting. Can somebody do a Merriam-Webster and see if there's a difference between boasting and bragging? Because I'm not sure there is. And then, for some reason, they asked if he knew Eric Prince and Ted Malloch, and he said yes, he did for like 5 or 7 years, which is crazy. And then, finally, at the very end, Bannon said that the emails, they presented him with Roger Stone's emails to Steve Bannon about how he could save the Trump campaign at a time when Trump was, doing terribly against Hillary Clinton. And apparently Roger Stone said he had an idea that could save Donald Trump's butt, except he used a different word. And then he also said, it isn't pretty. I could do something, but it won't be pretty. And then Bannon was asked again after he looked at the emails about the Stone exchanges as Trump was behind in the polls with Hillary Clinton. He said, why did Roger Stone say this to you? And he said, Roger is an agent provocateur. He's an expert in the tougher side of politics. And when you're this far behind, you're going to have to use every tool in the toolbox. So asked about these dirty tricks, Bannon said, they're the kinds of things campaigns use when they've got to make up some ground. And then Bannon was showed an October 4th, 2016 email when Julian Assange aborted a press conference, and the prosecutor asked if the Trump campaign viewed Stone as the access point to WikiLeaks, and Bannon's answer was, I think we did, yes. So Roger Stone was the intermediary between the Trump campaign and WikiLeaks. And what did WikiLeaks have? They were a fence. They had stolen, hacked materials gotten by Russian intelligence, the Russian government's intelligence units, hacked into the DNC server and Hillary Clinton and Podesta's emails, and then fenced them to Julian Assange. And Roger Stone was coordinating the release of these with Julian Assange. So what does this have to do with Ukraine? Nothing! Don't you see that this Ukraine thing is a red herring? It's a made-up story to take the focus off of the Russian hacking and the giving of the stolen goods to WikiLeaks, and then Roger Stone coordinating on behalf of the campaign with WikiLeaks to dump them at critical times, especially the Access Hollywood time. Jerome Corsi, Roger Stone going crazy trying to reach Julia. Dump. We got to save Trump. It's not going to be pretty, but we got to do dirty things. We got to do illegal things. We got to do heinous things. We got to bamboozle the American people to elect this fraud. So that's the other thing that happened today. And man, why aren't there cameras in this court? I guess because they don't want to turn their trial into a circus. But this testimony is stuff that I've been dying to hear. And I'll tell you another thing I want to hear. I want Rudy Giuliani to testify. I want Donald Trump to testify. You know, Donald Trump, I would love to talk to Mueller, but he never did. And then when he did answer questions in writing, Mueller testified that generally Donald Trump was not truthful in those answers that he wrote down. You know. So there's that. But I mean, honestly, I want to see this testimony from Rudy Giuliani. And if somebody on the Judiciary Committee and or the Intelligence Committee fails to ask Rudy Giuliani about what happened with Anthony Weiner's computer and the inside October surprise that he was touting on Fox News, what was it and how did he know that they had Anthony Weiner's computer and that they were sitting on it and that they would dump it on Comey? Oh my God. And the two things, I just want you to know, the two things that hurt Hillary Clinton, and like I said, because this is the three things that hurt Hillary Clinton. One, she's Hillary Clinton. Yes, I said that. Two, the Comey reopening up of the email investigation because Rudy Giuliani and James Kallstrom at the FBI, in New York, were able to get the field office of the New York FBI to sit on Anthony Weiner's computer and dump it on Comey. Comey having to send an email to Congress or a letter to Congress saying that he got a new computer that's got emails from Hillary, got to open the investigation. That was leaked by Devin Nunes, okay? And people say, why did Comey give a press conference? He didn't. That's in your freaking imagination. It did not happen. Comey sent a letter advising the Intelligence Committee because he had said that if anything new came along after he closed it, he would let them know. And he did. And they leaked it. And that hurt Hillary Clinton. And the third thing that hurt Hillary Clinton were these freaking emails. This was a dirty campaign, dirty tricks, foreign adversaries using, a guy who is desperate for money and subject to flattery and would do anything and everything, including accepting stolen material from a foreign adversary, and get Roger Stone to coordinate it for him. I mean, this is sick. This is a twisted time. All right, Anthony in Colorado. Ron in Buffalo. Ron.
Yeah. Ron.
Okay.
I've been listening to these guys on MSNBC, and they seem to be, at least some of them, the Morning Joe, and that seem to be singing the praises of Bloomberg as a possible, a victor. Don't they realize how close his relationship with Rudy Giuliani was? As Giuliani was the mayor, and he seemed to be in sort of disrepute until 9/11, and he builds that up as a big deal with becoming America's mayor. Then he campaigns actively with Bloomberg. Bloomberg comes from 20 points behind and edges out Mark Green, who's also not my favorite candidate either, but nevertheless,
he was my boss.
Do that. But the point is, Bloomberg has got a close association with Giuliani, and now it looks like one of the possible defenses for the Republicans for this impeachment business is that, well, Giuliani did it all. He was the bad guy, and they're going to say that Trump wasn't quite aware of this. And I just, how's that going to?
Well, that doesn't fly. Just let's just pop that balloon, okay? And even in this phone call, this memo of the transcript, Donald Trump is heard telling Zelensky that his guy to talk to on anything is Rudy Giuliani. So he can't say...
You're right about that.
Right, so he can't say that it's all Rudy and I didn't know.
Right. But, I mean, that seems to be one of the things, like, it looks like they might be willing to throw him under the bus. And my only point, my only point is that how's that going to look for Bloomberg if that happens and it's all over the media how Giuliani's is dirty?
Listen, the only way that Bloomberg interferes in this election in any demonstrable way that would irritate me is if he runs as an independent in the end.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Other than that, if
probably...
he's... Yeah, listen, he wants to be in the Democratic primary. Welcome, Mayor Bloomberg to the Democratic primary. Go with God. Lots of luck. Mazel tov on your filing. Good for you. Have a great weekend.